introducing myself. My name is Justin Mendoza, and I am the Executive Director for UAEM, Universities Allied for Essential Medicines, North America. I'm excited to have you here with us today. I've been working in the space of access to medicines really for the past 15 years, if you combine everything. Nope. Is that an overestimate? No, it's 13. 13 years when you go back to when I started as a UAEM student myself, and now working with this crew. So I'm excited to talk with you all, everyone here live as webinar attendees, and everyone who will watch this recording later, to hear about really the latest innovation in the access licensing and access policy space at the university level. So we're excited, we're thrilled, and we're in a great spot. For folks who aren't as familiar with UAEM, I'll just briefly cover who we are, and then I'll introduce our panelists, and we'll get started right away. So that one's me. As you can see, of course, I've had shots that are much more charismatic and exciting than my current outfit. But to really know UAEM, we have to go way back. Usually we start our story in 2001 with student activism, but I like to start a little bit older, earlier, 1966. And in 66, a drug was invented, a chemical called D4T. It was first synthesized by a professor, as you can see here, part of the National Cancer Institute. And in 1986, Yale University picked up that product, worked with professors, and discovered and patented the use of that drug for HIV. Well, we would know that it would treat HIV in a couple more years. We licensed the drug out to Bristol Myers Squibb in a exclusive license that allowed the company to bring it to market, that created the kind of natural pathway of public funds going into a private company's holds in order to create a product that actually reaches people and patients. Clinical trials began and other things happened. Finally, D4T stavridine makes it to the market in 1994 when it's approved by the FDA. And I like to start in 1966 and bring you to 1994 just to show first and foremost how extensively long a story of a drug can really be, but also to show how many different players there are. On this one slide, we're talking about government funders, private corporations, and a university having a role and a hand in developing this one drug. Now, the reason it's core to UAEM's story is that in 2001, the price for D4T ranges by the market, but was as high as $14,000 per patient per year, or $1,600 per patient per year. And it was part of the antiretroviral cocktail AZT that folks were using for treating HIV at the time. And Yale students, with the help of Doctors Without Borders, or Medicine Sans Frontières, and the Treatment Action Campaign based out of South Africa, as well as a number of other partners in the access to medicine space, realized that Yale played a crucial role in the development, discovery, and ultimately the licensing and ownership of this drug. And so they tried to go and talk to the university, tried to play nice ball and have a conversation about changing things. But at the time, we weren't at the point that we are today in terms of conversation with universities about changing access to medicines. And so this turned into a contentious moment. Our founder, Amy Kapczynski, who's now a professor at Yale, actually started working with students across campus and connecting with the original researchers who developed the drug, and co-developed a campaign to pressure the university to change its licensing practice for D4T and allow access to the drug in low and middle income countries and truly turn the tide on HIV/AIDS. And overall, Yale pushed back. It was all over the press and it was a big fight. We like to say that in 2001, really the small group of Yale students sparked a revolution that essentially changed the access to medicines world together. And this is Amy, of course, there. And later we see a photo of our own protesters pushing on COVID-19 drugs. But in between, this is the success story of D4T. Almost overnight, after the Yale students gathered and built this campaign and pushed the university, the university eventually decided to go back to the negotiating table, a very hard task to do, actually, and renegotiate the IP with the manufacturer of the drug, allowing for non-exclusive licenses to exist all over the world. And this graph shows us what happened to that price over the 10-year period from the point in 2001 where generic competition is introduced to 2011. Now, this drug isn't the safest, so if you looked at this today, you just wouldn't see it being used. But at the time, it was the best standard drug in HIV care. And so you can see the price drops almost immediately, 90%, and then gets down to less than $1 per day from a drug that costs $14,000 per year. And you might be asking yourself, great, that's an exciting story. It involves one university and one drug, but why is UAEM here working on universities more broadly? And certainly we're not talking about a nearly 80-year-old HIV drug in one case today, nor are we even talking about Yale. But why universities? It's because universities are where most drugs of high impact originate, at university laboratories. The NIH study to the right is a little outdated, but it actually shows that NIH funding contributed to 210 approved drugs over a 5-year period, which was every drug approved by the FDA in that 5-year period, most of which involved universities actually being the research labs that did the drug discovery and the work. And our other stat here, between a quarter and a third of all new medicines originate in university labs, is based on that same set of data. So when we look at how can we actually change the access to medicine space to make sure that affordability for medicines and barriers for cost are not there on drugs that were developed with taxpayer funding, we look at universities as part of the key solution. And this is UAEM's ultimate vision, that we will see universities be a part of the solution to the access to medicines crisis. And we work to promote these access to medical innovations, change norms and practices in academic patenting and licensing, and to empower students, like the 2 students that we have here today, to advocate for a biomedical research and development system that actually works for everyone. So I will pull down these slides in just a moment, but I want to introduce to you first our 2 student leaders who are here to answer questions and talk through things. Then we'll hear from Megan a little bit more about Megan's history as a Berkeley student, and then we'll introduce our wonderful guest speaker, Lale Shayesta from Berkeley's actual intellectual property office, and actually talk about what we're really doing at Berkeley and what the Affordable Access Plan means for the future of access to medicines. So first, I'll introduce Neda Ashtari, who is actually just graduated from the David Geffen School of Medicine at UCLA and will be attending residency in internal medicine at Yale. I'm excited because that means that she doesn't get to go very far. We will still keep her in the UAM network. But she's, in addition to being a UAMer, to really kickstarting the UCLA efforts in the past few years and being the star of a documentary film about those efforts. Neda is also the founder of Protect Us, a nonprofit that combats medical mistrust and increases access to essential medicines and works on vaccine access in California in particular. And she's also spearheaded efforts to improve the affordability of all medicines and healthcare technologies developed on campus through the first affordable access plan. So Neda is one of our kind of UAM heroes of the past few years that I am excited to have here to dive in. So I don't know if you want to wave, say hello for a second or anything like that.
Hello, that was a great introduction. Nice to meet you all. Thank you for having me here. And I'll pass it over to Megan, today's star.
That's right. And Megan is a recent graduate from UC Berkeley, recent as in a couple of weeks ago, with a bachelor's degree in molecular and cell biology. And she's researched the biological implications of aging and Alzheimer's disease, as well as non-alcoholic fatty liver disease at UC Berkeley. Basically, she's much smarter than I am. While serving as the president of the UAM chapter at Cal, she also led the work for affordable medicines programs and worked directly with Lale on the policy that we're going to talk about today. Megan, I will turn it to you to introduce a little bit more about your own work.
Thanks, Justin. Thank you all for being here today. So I was just going to, talk a little bit about my background at Berkeley. So when I entered Berkeley as a freshman, I was really amazed by the world-class research that was going on, whether it was Jim Allison's CTLA-4 checkpoint inhibitors, which have been revolutionizing oncology interventions, or Jennifer Doudna's Nobel Prize-winning gene editing therapies, which are being used globally. Last year, I had the opportunity to meet Dr. Doudna, and I discussed the importance of ensuring access to her gene editing technology. And she even has stated, as exciting as CRISPR is as a technology, it is only going to be impactful if people can access it, afford it, and benefit from it. And from there, I've done a lot of other research, as Justin was saying, in Alzheimer's disease, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, and also interventions in SARS-CoV-2 virulence. And through working along, Berkeley's world-class researchers, I also became interested in ensuring access to therapies and intellectual property coming out of Berkeley labs. When I learned about UAM's mission of students working with their university to ensure access to life-saving medicines, I was amazed, and I immediately wanted to join. Hearing about UAM students at UCLA working to support an affordable access plan interested me to see what policies were in place at Berkeley. So I began researching existing policies for drug access at my university. I met with university administrators to learn about licensing plans, along with the Innovative Genomics Institute at Berkeley that focuses on gene editing therapies such as sickle cell interventions. And I wanted to help identify how I might be able to support access initiatives. I was really encouraged to learn about Berkeley's Reservation of Rights Clause, along with our socially responsible licensing program, which Lale can describe in detail. I also felt that our licensing could be strengthened by the implementation of an affordable access plan provision similar to UCLA's. By collaborating with IPERA, I've found deeply insightful and thought-provoking conversation, and I've really enjoyed specifically working with Lale, who's been a wonderful supporter. So today I'm honored and privileged to attend a university that is a champion in innovation and values patient access to essential resources. I also want to acknowledge the UAM community of student advocates, licensing experts, and physicians who have supported Cal UAM over the past 4 years. Thank you. And I'll turn it back over to Justin.
Wonderful. Thank you, Megan. We're thrilled to have had you join our organization and do this work as we've gone. And of course, the beauty of this webinar is I think we're just at like a good midpoint in the work, which is even more exciting. So I have the pleasure now of introducing our guest speaker, Lale Shayesta, who is the Director of Intellectual Property and Administration in the Office of Technology Licensing at Berkeley, where she develops UC Berkeley's IP strategy and oversees licensing in a number of areas, from life sciences, chemistry, medical instruments, physical sciences, engineering, software technology, and artificial intelligence, which reminds me we should talk about that someday. Lale also handles trademark and copyright matters and open source compliance, and additionally worked with sister offices in IP matters for government grants and contracts, foundation grants and contracts, and sponsored research agreements. Lale is a trained scientist as well, which is probably one of the coolest things, a through-line connection with UAEM. Prior to joining UC Berkeley, she performed population genetics research at Stanford, pediatric brain tumor research, and ovarian cancer research at UCSF, brain tumor research at the University of Chicago, and comparative genomics research at Exelixis. I should have tried that before. She then embarked on a law career and became a patent agent at Exelixis, followed by a director of IP and assistant general counsel for IP matters at SRI. Lale holds a PhD in biophysics from UC San Francisco and a JD from Concord Law School, and is also a member, of course, of the California State Bar and registered to practice before the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. An extensive introduction, but
wow. Thank you.
Absolutely. So, Lolly, to kind of kick us off here, I'll stop our screen share so that the four of you can be on screen. And instead, I will lose my questions because that's exactly what my computer decided was appropriate. No, but I'll start with asking, could you start by discussing drug development, patenting, and licensing for those that might be hearing about this for the first time on this call?
Sure. So drug development actually is a really long process, like you provided in your very first slide, right? In a lab and at a university, you especially in the drug technologies, especially at Berkeley, where we don't have a medical school. We are told that our medical school is UCSF, but okay, we do have one and its name is UCSF, okay, but in general, right? So the way it happens is in a lab, an inventor, a PI, the very first thing that happens is a screen on a number of compounds, right? The screen happens in cells and something might click, right? One of these compounds might prove successful or a whole bunch of them. And then they have to whittle down until they finally get to one or a set or small set of I want to say compounds that they're interested in, basically, right? And then that's where we go, that's when they come to our office, right? Basically providing us with a set of, I'm going to call them chemical agents, because then we have to make pictures of them, basically, right? And then we will file patent applications on them. And this is where it all starts. The university does not have the resources really to advance any chemical compound to its end stages. So where we are stuck is at the very beginning, maybe just a little, maybe possibly a couple of studies in model organisms, and that's it. And that's where we look for licensees, and hopefully when we have licensees, the licensees will start to then pick it up, right? And that process goes for another 10, 15 or so years, maybe even more, because all of these stages need to happen, right? So the drug or compound or compounds need to travel through the model organisms. Then if all is accepted, one government clearance to then try them in actual individuals and go through phases of trials. And then if everything is good, then we will come to a drug, basically an FDA approval. By then, the life of the patent might actually be finished. However, because these compounds go through such long processes, there are a couple of ways to extend the life of the patent. It's not the life of the patent that gets extended, but it's the life of the compound that gets extended, basically. And then hopefully they get to sales and everything will be nice. Where the technology is actually not a compound and it is a technology such as gene editing, that's another story too, right? And with that, then gene editing first, and we are very fortunate to be in the gene editing camp on the gene editing campus. The editing needs to work, right? And so the very first, and for those of you who might be familiar with the gene editing, the CRISPR technology, the very first CRISPR technology, the Cas9 or the enzyme, right, is a big enzyme. It's tough to get it to work. And it's taken a lot of time to get it to work. Now they're coming up with newer enzymes that are a lot smaller, a lot easier for cells to pick up, a lot easier for cells to deal with. And so those are spinning off newer families of these CRISPR technologies, but they still need to prove that they are workable in the laboratory, right? So a lot of the companies or startups that we have licensed these to are still struggling to get them to work, but they're getting them to work. That's awesome. So
that's huge. That makes sense. So given the complexity and the considerations here for different technologies, I would love to hear, can you tell us a little bit about kind of double clicking on that idea of there being more considerations for different medical technologies and licenses. Can you tell us a little bit about the considerations that lead you to think about affordability in some of these pieces, and what kind of led us towards the affordable access plan, which we'll still talk about what that is in a couple of seconds, but what kind of brings that forward for you?
So I know that all of you know, right, the UAEM students, and as you know, our office started in 2004, and by 2008 or 2010, our boss, Carol Memora, was engaged with UAEM students, and UC has a very long, Berkeley has a long tradition in socially responsible licensing. In fact, we won the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office's award for a responsible licensing plan, and that specifically was for malaria. And so all of our licenses actually do have a socially responsible section. Basically, they do say that if for humanitarian use and in specific regions of the world. And for example, here, licensee, we are going to give you this license. However, if an entity comes along, right, and wants to take this technology into countries in lower middle income countries, and you do have a presence in those countries, right? So the presence means that they have to have patent protection, right? If they have presence in those countries, another entity comes along, wants to manufacture and sell in those countries for no money, no royalty, you will allow them. And licensee, if you don't do that, we will take the license from you, we will give it to them. We have had no resistance to that, actually, to that clause for all the years that we have been dealing with these licenses. And the reason for that is nobody wants to be the bad person, right? Nobody wants to be the bad guy. Nobody wants to not allow these things, right? And we also did, when COVID hit, we were one of the very first universities that provided a non-exclusive licensing at no cost at all and no royalties for any COVID-related technologies that we would develop. I wrote up that license, put it up. So we have a long-standing history. So it is really important, actually, to make sure that areas of the world that including the U.S. actually, that cannot afford the medicines that we as a university provide a plan for them to be able to do so. So they can afford it. They will be able to take advantage of what everybody else who has insurance and whose insurance can afford it can also take advantage of.
Absolutely. That's great. I mean, what I love about this conversation is it's music to my ears. I feel like I've been trying to say these things without the experience of being in the licensing room for years. So it's always wonderful to hear these things. I'll turn it quickly to just to Megan and Netta. Feel free to jump in here. I just wanted to frame up the reason that we wanted to highlight, of course, Berkeley's work and Lale's work in this field is UAM's work for this entire, really since that Stavridine story, has been to try to get to this kind of equitable licensing space, right, where we can really focus in on where do people lack access and what does that access look like. And so turning specifically to Netta, I would love to hear from you a little bit about the Xtandi experience and what went on at UCLA and what led us to a point where UCLA adopted a version of the Affordable Access Plan as well.
Sure. So at UCLA, there was a prostate cancer drug called Xtandi. And essentially, we had the same issue that Lala was just speaking about, which is that sometimes when a drug is developed on a university campus and a licensee comes to the table to take that technology and bring it to market, you aren't considering the affordability of the drug once it comes to market. And so what happened with Xtandi in particular was the drug was licensed and then sub-licensed and eventually came to market at a price that was prohibitive across the US, but especially particularly for populations around the world. And in India, actually UCLA ended up filing a patent on behalf of some of the pharmaceutical companies to block generic production of the drug. And that caused obviously huge issues because it delayed generic production and prevented people from having access to the only drug that treated this condition. And so, you know, I met Reshma, who is the president of UAEM, and was instantly hooked when she explained to me what was going on. And it was really shocking to find out that a public university would be acting in a way to make public goods inaccessible to the public. And I think that that was just because we weren't having these conversations about affordability and being proactive and thinking about these things when we are first designing licenses. And so we were, you know, it took a little bit of nudging the university administration, a few years of nudges, and eventually through meetings and negotiating different provisions within their licenses, we came to an agreement with the help of the Medicines Patent Pool and many other experts who essentially set up a mechanism for exclusive licenses to have an affordable access provision. And that provision essentially it asks licensees to come up with a plan to make drugs affordable in low and lower middle income countries. Megan should talk about how Berkeley's goes actually one step further, which is a huge deal and incredibly impressive, but that's kind of the origin story of Xtandi and the Affordable Access Plan.
Yeah, excellent. And yeah, Megan, I was going to pass it to you next, so that'd be great.
Yeah, thanks, Nada. Yeah, so hearing about Nada's story, seeing White Coat Rebels, if anyone's familiar, that's the documentary that came out about the whole Xtandi case and Affordable Access Plan, was really motivating for a sister campus to be able to, you know, address access issues, especially for very impactful therapeutics. So coming over to Berkeley, you know, I knew we had this history that Lali was speaking about of having socially responsible policies. And I've spoken with, you know, our wonderful researchers who care deeply about access and also our administration. And they shared my sentiments that they wanted access initiatives to be, you know, focused at Berkeley. And we already had so many in place. And I thought, you know, we could expand this one step further, similar to UCLA. So we've supported the Affordable Access Plan as a provision in licenses for all medical technologies at Berkeley. And now we have another stipulation that Lali has been wonderful in working with us on about access for underserved populations in the US. And this is really advancing the field. And again, Berkeley is leading the way as a champion for access initiatives, especially with their upcoming sickle cell gene editing therapy, which will have huge revolutionizing impacts on people of color who are suffering from sickle cell disease in the US. So I am really interested for other universities to potentially consider the benefits of allowing access to their therapies through Affordable Access Plan provisions, as well as considering populations in the US.
So I'll jump in there. I think, thank you. Yes, that's all awesome. I think one of the takeaways for everybody would be to have a dialogue with the university, right? From the get-go. Berkeley is a little bit of an exception in general because, for example, most universities don't have all of their licensing templates all online already. Almost nobody has, right? So I came into Berkeley and I thought, you know, so that's the first thing I pushed for. Why don't we put all of our licensing templates online? This way, any licensee will know what it is we are trying to license to them and what language it is we are going to use, right? But after that, let's have a conversation, right? Just like Nida was saying, you know, I don't think it was UCLA's fault to go into India and prosecute in India. It is the licensee, right? So the licensee says, I want to go into India, I want to do this, and you know, UC will say, okay, because the licensee is paying. But then once a conversation started and they realized, oh, you know, if the licensee is doing this and nobody else wants to pick it up and nobody else would like to, and if there's somebody else right out there, even though there is a license or a stop in India, if there's somebody who wants to do an affordable access plan, for example, the medicines patent pool, then why not, right? It is the same with Berkeley. When a licensee comes along, we will agree to how they want to prosecute because they're sitting in our shoes. But then again, through the through our not patents for humanity, through the humanitarian license language that we have, right? If a licensee comes along or a new licensee comes along and is interested in developing a compound or a generic version with no royalties, no nothing in the same area and region, then why not, right? We're happy to yank it from our licensee and give it to the other entity. But it's a conversation, right? It's a conversation that needs to happen, and it's a conversation that is always better if the parties come to an understanding and are willing to speak with each other, and there's just a mutual agreement, right? So I'm just saying this for all the future students and all the future, right, members of the team and the group. So awesome for what you're doing. Teach all of the new students who come after you to have a healthy dialogue with the offices of technology licensing, because we are sitting here, we're trying to license technology, and you know, if we don't know exactly what it is you want, or exactly how it is that we need to work with each other, you know, that's a conversation and a partnership.
Yes, I completely agree. And that was really the key takeaway at UCLA, which we came to realize was if we presented a solution that worked for both parties, that was great. And people were willing to engage. But when you go in and you're upset about something, but you don't really have a plan or a, you know, other parties able to participate and expertise there, then you might not get as far in the conversation. Always, when you have a seat at the table, you should be a partner, because you have to understand these are university administrators. These are, you know, they're good people. They go into this because they want to bring innovations to the market. That's the ultimate goal, and it's an incredibly important one. And so you just have to kind of align your goals and realize that if you offer a mechanism, people will get on board, usually.
And you sort of need to figure out who it is you need to speak with, you know, from the get-go, right? So I understood, and I might be completely off, but I understood that perhaps the first time Berkeley was approached was with the chancellor. And our chancellor has like this much understanding of science. She's awesome. I absolutely love her, actually. She's extraordinarily engaging, but she has you know, she is not well versed in the biological arts. So whatever the students were talking about was not sitting, because it was just, you know, not something that one is used to, right? But if you figure out, and now that you have figured out, right, if you as a team and as a group guide who to approach at a university to be the best possible approach in person, then that would be fantastic.
Absolutely.
There's a question. Yes, Mark. All of our license templates are available online, and this one is as well.
Absolutely. And we can we'll make sure that the link to it is sent out as a follow-up, it's already in the chat. Perfect.
I was about to put it up too. Excellent.
Wonderful. And so just to throw out there, for folks who are listening in and hearing about the Affordable Access Plan for the first time, Monty asks a good question there as well. But it's about UCLA. We might not have that exact number here, but feel free if we do.
We don't have an exact number, but Amir Neighborg has told us that over dozens of times, and that there has been no pushback from licensees, which has been really wonderful and encouraging to hear.
There's no pushback. It's a nice language. So, and we have used it too, and there has been no pushback. The pushbacks will likely come when there has been FDA approval, but let's see how that will go.
Definitely. And actually, that's something I would love to touch on really quick. So, because I think when we were describing the affordable access plan a few minutes ago, we didn't give too many of the specific details, but that's a really important part for folks who are tuning in, for UAMers who've been involved in this work for a while. What sets this apart to make it very different from even the socially responsible license, the humanitarian licensing, and other provisions that have existed is that this affordable access plan is really activates at the time of approval by the FDA or the EMA or other regulatory bodies, right? And so, understanding that, like when the price is set, when it's about to hit the market, there's a requirement that an affordable access plan be presented to the university. And that's where a dialogue can happen about how are you going to make this accessible? How are people with these conditions in these communities going to access it, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So we're keeping fingers crossed. Let's see how it will go.
Yeah, I was talking with some folks about this the other day and realized while talking, yeah, we'll probably know exactly how this goes with our first one in what
20 years?
6 years? Like, yeah, we'll really see over about a decade.
That's perfectly fine. At some point, this conversation needs to happen. So if it's that point, hey, so be it. If there are other compounds that or drugs that are way ahead or much farther ahead, right, in their life, and hopefully there's going to be an FDA plan sooner, hey, we will see that too.
And I'll point out one thing, which and I feel funny quoting her because she's in the audience here, but our president of UAEM North America, Reshma Ramachandran, pointed out while testifying before Congress just a little over a week ago that one of the big impacts of the Affordable Access Plan, something we can look at here, is that there hasn't been any disinterest from licensees. We aren't seeing folks go, Berkeley and UCLA, they're too extreme because they've added this provision. We won't talk to them now. Instead, as we just heard Lale mention, and as we heard Neda bring up from what we've heard from UCLA, it hasn't affected business as usual, which is great, right? Things are still going to make it to market and be licensed. Well, we don't know about market, but they'll be licensed, and then we'll keep our fingers crossed. There's been this long-standing canard in the access licensing and reasonable pricing space that if you add a clause on pricing and affordability to your licensing term, that industry just won't talk to you, that it will completely chill the investment in the licensing practice. And that's often been what agencies have used to shy away from talking about reasonable pricing or talking about affordability at the point of even government contracting. And Reshma pointed this out in response to a question from Senator Cassidy, that actually, if you look at what universities are doing right now, including Berkeley, you can actually see that universities are willing to put this forward, and we aren't hearing about major tech companies, major pharmaceutical companies, or most likely smaller biotechs at the university level, walking away from the negotiating table just because there's a mention of affordability. It's this idea that's been spread for so long, and we have to combat that idea while we talk with folks in the broader public.
And I hope that you guys really push the Congress on that, right? Because they're the ones who can set these prices. There has been conversations that the Bayh-Dole Act should be help set the prices, but Bayh-Dole Act is just the wrong medium to do that. The Congress is the one with the purse, with the strings on the purse, and they're the ones who need to bone up and basically help out.
Right. Yeah, we've explored quite a few of the Bayh-Dole cases, and we're actually party to the Xtandi one going on now. But absolutely agreed that there's, at least as it's interpreted currently, the constant answer is no, we can't use this. But it would take an act of Congress to clarify, to set rules, to make sure that things actually are in stone and reasonable pricing. So that's great. It's a really good point. Awesome. So I want to leave space for any of our panelists to add a few points here, and then we have some next steps that we wanted to talk through for the UAM audience that's tuning in. But yeah, Lale, any other points you wanted to raise about affordability, access, or licensing?
No, I think we're good. Again, I think hopefully UAEM would be at a place where you will have people who can talk with, not who can talk with Congress, just like the ones who can push Congress, really, because insurance companies can push Congress very easily. And that's why you see these drug prices going nuts. But hopefully Congress will start hearing that people do actually need good medicines too. Everybody does, not right. So, all right. Let's see. Along a similar. Okay, so are there plans? I'm looking at the question. Adapt AAP to other tech transfer modalities other than exclusive licensing. It's not in an exclusive license. It's a license agreement, the license agreement that we have online is not for, it is for an exclusive license, but the template for a non-exclusive license will be identical, right? If you, most of the time, for drugs, any entity will want an exclusive license. They don't look for non-exclusive licenses because they will need to spend enormous quantities of money to bring a drug to the market. So it's mostly for exclusive plans. However, we're not just talking about drugs. There are other things, right? There are devices, and there are research tools and kits that can also be used. And those will go, research tools, research kits, devices will go non-exclusively. As a matter of fact, we have this one research device, for screening eye disease from very far using an iPhone, that we have a very large company as a licensee. And one of our professors was interested to bring it at almost no cost to lower middle income countries. We approached the licensee, can we have this one and license, either you give it or how would you like to deal with it? They said, yep, we don't, no problem. You take it, you give it to them. And that's exactly what we did. So for that was a non-exclusive modality. Let me see. Okay, are there plans to extend, adapt? Okay, AG and spinouts too, right? So a startup still needs a license, and all of our startups will take these licenses. And we have a startup who has actually accepted this license without any alters, with this language without any alters. Maybe ask about Berkeley's plan to encourage its sister universities along a similar path. So all you sister universities already know about this. I've already brought it up at 2 different meetings with all of them. So they all know about it. They have asked me about it. They have seen the template. So remembering that not all the sister universities, all the UC universities really do have, they don't have, right, medical schools or necessarily medical technologies. But they all know me. They all know who to go to if they had any questions. So so the answer is yes, they all know about it.
And then to add into that, actually, well, Netta, I don't want to steal your thunder. If you want to announce this quickly, because you just got the
Sure. So we are excited to announce that UC Riverside has agreed to adopt the Affordable Access Plan as well. So that will be our 3rd UC, which is very exciting. And we are actually in conversations with the other UC tech transfer offices as well, and they seem to be going very well. And we're removing the language that says specifically the regions from our template so that it can be expanded to universities outside. Hopefully Yale will be next, fingers crossed. We're all there, so it will be hard to escape us. But the plan is to expand it, yes, definitely.
So yeah, when you go to, so Riverside came to me, right? The moment they heard from me, can we talk to you? So meaning that when you speak with them, when you approach them, let them know to come speak with me.
Oh, I always do. I always name drop Lala because that's how I gain credibility.
Sorry, that's funny. That's
No,
awesome.
great.
That's awesome. Yes, and they know who to reach out to. Yes, go Bears. The NIH director position is an opportunity as well. That's right. 100%. You should be able to reach out to them. Other major research universities too. Yep, to move the whole access ecosystem upstream. I hope so. Let's see how it goes. A lot of universities, hopefully Yale will be acceptable. A lot of universities, especially, you know, I want to be really careful about what comes out of my mouth. In California, we're very, very different. Yeah, a lot of other universities, probably in different parts of United States, and perhaps some of the non-public universities may not be as open. I'm trying to be really careful, so that's it.
Excellent. Yeah, and as far as UAEM's plans on this, you know, I'm actually going to just pull back up our slides here to talk about the broad pieces of what we see as next steps. So for everyone on the line who's a UAMer, who's an alumnus, who is a supporter and wants to get more involved and jump in, you know, one of our big things is, of course, we want to take this on the road. We want to make sure that the Affordable Access Plan is a tool in everyone's toolkit as a way to advance forward access and affordability on medicines developed on campus. And yeah, the one of our big plans and one of our big targets, we're actually meeting on this tonight and talking about it in a strategy huddle, is what do we do with opportunities like a new NIH director and conversations about what can happen at the government level to promote, you know, pricing clauses and other policies that we think are critical and essential at this point. And for the students on the line from anywhere around the world, actually, because I know Monty's in the UK, you can start by researching what your university has already done, and then jump into really thinking about, you know, how do we build on that? How do we work with our technology transfer office to go to the next level? You know, I mean, Berkeley already had humanitarian licensing and socially responsible licensing on the books and working. And so this is a really great conversation that we were able to have, and by I mean Megan, Lale, and Neda, to get started and build this out along with some of our wonderful board members and others who hopped in. And then the big thing here, of course, you know, just a thank you to everyone for attending today, for joining in. For those of you who watch this later online, thanks for RSVPing and jumping in. If you want to get started working with us, we have a link here that will connect you in to get connected to our network. And of course, email addresses for the three of us. We didn't share Lale's email address here publicly, but
You're more than welcome to do that. That's perfectly fine. Actually, I'll do it myself.
Perfect. But yeah, thank you all for joining us. I mean, we have a few more minutes here. I'll just stop the recording, but if anyone has other questions or chat here, we've promised that we'll end this at least at the top of the hour, so we'll make sure not to hold you forever, Lale. But thank you all for joining us.